from Patterns for Pirates, and I'm going to show you a little bit about lengthening or shortening the new P4P wrap dress. It's a little trickier in some spots, so I'm just going to show you the pieces that might have you scratching your head and worrying if you're doing it correctly. The flounce pieces, the curved hem, and things like that can be a little tricky when you're first looking at the pattern pieces. So those are the pieces we're going to jump in and look at. And after the video, I hope it answers all your questions and you're ready to go. Let's get started. Alright guys, here we are with the front piece of the adult wrap dress. And I'm going to show you how to add length. You would do the same thing for takeaway, except for the opposite, of course. And I'm going to do it with a knee length flounce. That's because it is a more manageable size piece for the camera, and because the flounce option is much trickier than the straight across option. So I'm going to cut mine at the knee length flounce here. I am tall, I am 5'10". I add the same amount of length to every single pattern that I do. From my armpit to my waistline, I need 1 extra inch. And from my waistline to my hip, I need another inch. Since this is a dress, I could use another ½ inch down here, but I prefer shorter dresses, so I usually don't add any more down there. I just like to show off those legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut horizontally in between the arms and the waist. If you perfectly grade your pattern, you're actually adding it quite evenly throughout. My grain line didn't print on this pattern piece. I have a tester piece right here. So I'm going to mark my grain line quickly. I'm going to do it right here. It can be anywhere on your piece. Just making sure I'm nice and straight. If your grain line on whatever pattern piece you're working on does not go all the way down your pattern when you're trying to add length, it's really smart to extend it almost all the way. I'm very small through my shoulders, so I never add up here, but if I was adding length up here, I would extend it all the way. It's much easier to make sure you're keeping your grain line nice and straight when it extends all the way through your pattern piece. Okay, so I'm going to move this up an inch. I'm just going to throw a pattern weight or 2 on here to hold it in place. And what you want to do when you're adding length is keep your grain line perfectly straight. Okay, so I have this nice grid that I'm working with. Makes it really easy to line up that line on my grid, add a perfect inch right there. Now what you're going to do when you trace off your pattern is you're going to have to smooth out these curves. And this is where a French ruler really comes in handy. So this one kind of curves out a little bit for your bust and then starts curving under. So your bust line kind of curves out, and then this one kind of curves in. And so what I usually do when I'm trying to trace and draw it, you really want to do it from here all the way up. This is a really odd little curve here though. So what I'm going to do is start this way, and then I'm going to go a little bit this way, and you're going to eventually meet them in the middle. There we go. I'm going to try not to draw on that. So if I was tracing, I would trace this off and the curve would come down here. You would be trimming this off right there. And so it would be a nice smooth line. So I've added my inch above the waist. I'm going to do the same thing between my waist and my hip. And make sure straight and parallel to my green line, which I just used my cut chart to make sure I was straight on this one, which is a cheat move. But I know that's straight on my pattern piece. Okay, I'm going to fix this one. I moved it a little bit. And you know what, this one would be the same thing where you'd want to straighten out that curve. So you'd be coming in from high to low, and you'd be trimming that little piece off. You might even be adding a little bit here and trimming a little bit here. Most of the time when you're adding length, you end up taking some length off of one part and adding it to another part to smooth out that curve. Okay, spread an inch evenly. You know what, I did not cut that perfectly straight, and you can see because my guideline isn't perfectly straight. See if I can fix that. Move this around. Okay. Make sure I have an inch all around. And then you want to make sure your grain, oh, I moved my piece again, I'm sorry. You want to make sure your grain line stays nice and straight all throughout your whole pattern piece. And you can see this one had shifted over. Move that back. Okay, and you'll just smooth these curves out. Again, you usually end up trimming some off and adding a little bit on this side to make this a nice smooth edge. You really want to make sure you come in from way above where you cut and go to way below where you cut, or else it's a lot harder to smooth that edge out. So this is what I would do. Come in from way high and go way low, and then you want to redraw that straight line. You'd be trimming some off here and adding a little bit here when you traced. Now, things to take notice of. When you add length here, you are making your neckline longer here. This is something that you'll want to measure. It's about 1 inch that you have added to each side of your neckline. You're going to take note of that when you are cutting out your neckline piece. So here's my neckline piece. Since I added an inch here, I would add an inch here so that I add an inch to each side. This is cut on the fold. And add an inch to each side to match my new neckline that is 1 inch longer. I added an inch here along the flounce. This can be much trickier to add to, so I'm going to pull a flounce piece and show you how I do that. Okay, here is my first flounce piece. This is a pre-tester version, but it will work for our purposes. This is the first one. I added my length right at the top, so I'm going to add to this one. This one also has plenty of room to add. Some of the flounce pieces go almost in a complete circle and there's no room to add. So what I would do is I would come out 1 inch from here, and I would keep the width of this ending piece so it still matches my other pieces, and I would also keep the angle. So I'm going to keep this line right here parallel, and I'm going to extend this pattern piece out exactly 1 inch from these 2 points. Then I'm just going to use my ruler and I'm going to go from this end, and I'm going to redraw that curve. Of course, you have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then redraw that curve to smooth this out so that once you connect it, you have a nice smooth circle. If you added an inch to the upper part of your skirt and maybe another inch to the below, you would take your second flounce piece and do the same thing. So here is my knee length flounce piece 2. You would pick a side and add 1 inch exactly from the same points, and then you're going to try to smooth out your curve so it is continuing to be that very nice smooth circular shape. So however much you add to your skirt, you're going to have to add to your flounce pieces. Now the back you should not have to change. If you're just taking the width off the back, I'm actually going to grab, this is a youth version, that it's so much smaller and easier to get on the camera. If you're taking the length off and you're moving it up or you're stretching it down, the width is not going to change on the back, so there is no need to alter your back flounce pieces if you are adding or taking away length for the adult version. If you are adding a neckline flounce and you have added or taken away length, you are going to have to add or take away the length to your neckline flounce, the exact same that you would do to the other flounce. So I added 1 inch to my neckline. You are going to find the edge, move out 1 inch, which I can actually draw on this one. Oh, almost. Okay. And right there. And I'm trying to make this a nice, smooth, circular shape. I kind of ran out of my corner right there. But now this neckline is 1 inch longer right here because I added 1 inch along my neckline. Now this flounce will match it perfectly to my longer neckline. And you could do the same thing for taking away. This is the back of the neckline, and I'm not going to alter that since I did not add any width to the back neckline. I hope this helps. I know this one can be slightly confusing on adding and taking away length, and I hope that makes it nice and clear and simple and easy. And I cannot wait to see your perfect lengthed wrap dress in the P4P group or on Instagram or anywhere else I see your share. Good luck, guys.